The Coast Guard found the boat first. Empty, blood splattered across the pristine white deck like someone had been butchered. Jason Mitchell, 42 years old, successful architect, devoted father, gone. His 8-year-old daughter, Emily, daddy's little princess who never went anywhere without her stuffed rabbit, vanished. For 12 years, Rebecca Mitchell believed her husband and child had drowned in a tragic sailing accident. She mourned them. She buried empty coffins. She collected $2 million in life insurance money and tried to rebuild her shattered life. Until she opened that letter. What Rebecca discovered didn't just destroy everything she thought she knew about her family. It revealed a truth so twisted, so calculated, so utterly evil that it would make you question every single person you've ever trusted in your life. Because sometimes the people closest to you, the ones who kiss you goodnight and promise to protect you, are hiding the darkest, most monstrous secrets imaginable. What happened on that boat wasn't an accident, and what Rebecca found 12 years later will haunt your nightmares forever. Before we dive into this absolutely chilling case that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about human nature, I want to thank each and every one of you incredible viewers who make this channel possible. Your support, your comments, your shares, they mean everything to me. If you're new here and you love true crime stories that will grab you by the throat and refuse to let go, hit that subscribe button right now. Ring that notification bell because trust me, you absolutely do not want to miss what's coming. This story will change how you look at missing person cases forever. June 15, 2012, 7 a.m. The Mitchell family home in Sausalito, California. Picture perfect. 2-story colonial, manicured lawn, white picket fence, the American dream personified. Rebecca Mitchell stands at her kitchen window, watching her husband Jason load supplies onto their Ford F-150, 35-foot sailboat trailer hitched behind, ready for what should have been a magical father-daughter weekend on the water. Jason Mitchell, 42 years old, 6 feet tall, sandy brown hair always perfectly styled, designer polo shirts, expensive watch gleaming on his wrist. Everyone in their neighborhood knew Jason. Successful architect, devoted husband, doting father. The kind of man other men envied and women swooned over. But looks, as you're about to discover, can be devastatingly deceiving. 8-year-old Emily bounces down the front steps, her blonde pigtails dancing in the morning sun. Pink life jacket already strapped on, stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her small arms. She's been talking about this sailing trip for weeks. Just her and Daddy, out on the open ocean. Their special bonding time. Rebecca calls out from the doorway. You have everything? Sunscreen? Extra water? The marine radio? Jason flashes that $1 million smile that made her fall in love with him 15 years ago. Relax, honey. We'll be back Sunday night by 6. Don't worry so much. Those were the last words Rebecca would ever hear her husband speak. Don't worry so much. If only she had worried more. If only she had paid attention to the signs. The late-night phone calls Jason claimed were work emergencies. The mysterious cash withdrawals from their joint account. The way he'd been acting strange, distant, almost paranoid for months leading up to this trip. But hindsight is 20/20, and Rebecca Mitchell was about to learn the most brutal lesson of her life. At 7:30 a.m. sharp, Jason backs the truck out of their driveway. Emily waves frantically from the passenger seat, her gap-toothed grin visible through the window. Rebecca waves back, blowing kisses, completely unaware that she's watching her daughter disappear forever. The boat launch is just 20 minutes away. Clear skies, calm seas, perfect sailing conditions. Weather reports called for light winds and sunny skies all weekend. No storms in the forecast, no dangerous weather patterns, nothing that should have turned a peaceful father-daughter sailing trip into a nightmare. But nature wasn't the enemy that weekend. The real monster was sitting behind the wheel of that truck, humming along to the radio while his 8-year-old daughter chattered excitedly about the dolphins they might see. 6 p.m. Sunday evening, Rebecca checks her phone for the 100th time. No missed calls, no text messages. Jason and Emily should have been back hours ago. The marina closes at sunset, and darkness is already creeping across the bay. She calls Jason's cell phone, straight to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Jason Mitchell. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. That confident, smooth voice she'd heard 1,000 times before, now sounding like an echo from another world. 7 p.m., still nothing. Rebecca's stomach churns with anxiety. Jason is never late. Never. He's obsessively punctual. Schedules his entire life down to the minute. Something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. 8 p.m., Rebecca's hands shake as she dials 911. My husband and daughter went sailing this morning. They were supposed to be back hours ago. I think something's happened. The Coast Guard dispatcher's voice is calm, professional. Ma'am, how long have they been overdue? 2 hours. I know that doesn't sound like long, but you don't understand. My husband is never late, ever, and they have an 8-year-old with them. We'll send a patrol boat to check the usual sailing areas. Try not to panic. Most overdue boaters turn up safe and sound. But Rebecca can't shake the ice-cold dread spreading through her chest. Call it mother's intuition, call it wife's instinct, but every fiber of her being is screaming that something terrible has happened to her family. Midnight. The Coast Guard launches a full search and rescue operation. Helicopters with searchlights sweep the coastline. Multiple patrol boats comb every inch of the bay. Rebecca stands on the marina dock wrapped in a blanket watching the lights dance across the dark water like deadly fireflies. Monday morning, 6 a.m., 22 hours since Jason and Emily were supposed to return. The search expands to international waters. Media vans start showing up at the marina. Rebecca's phone won't stop ringing. Friends, family, reporters, all wanting to know the same thing. What happened to the Mitchell family? But the answer to that question is more horrifying than anyone could possibly imagine. Monday, 2 p.m., 72 hours after Jason and Emily set sail, a Coast Guard cutter spots something floating 15 miles offshore. A white sailboat, drifting aimlessly in the currents. No one on deck, no signs of life. The boat's name painted in elegant blue letters across the stern. Second Chance. How's that for irony? Jason Mitchell named his boat Second Chance, as if he knew even then that he'd need one. Coast Guard officers board the Second Chance at 3:15 p.m. What they find will haunt them for the rest of their careers. Blood. Lots of it. Dark red stains splattered across the white fiberglass deck, handprints smeared on the cabin walls. A child's pink life jacket, torn and bloody, hanging from the rigging like some macabre flag. But no bodies, no Jason Mitchell, no 8-year-old Emily, just blood and terror and the endless mocking silence of the open ocean. The boat's emergency radio is turned off. The GPS navigation system has been wiped clean. Life raft missing from its storage compartment. Emergency flares gone. It's as if someone systematically removed every possible way to call for help or survive in the water. Detective Paul Rodriguez of the Coast Guard Investigative Service boards the Second Chance at 4 p.m. 20-year veteran, seen every kind of maritime disaster imaginable. But this scene makes his blood run cold. In all my years investigating boating accidents, Detective Rodriguez would later tell reporters, "I've never seen anything like this." The blood spatter patterns were unusual, almost too perfect, too convenient. But at the time, with a grieving wife on the dock and media pressure mounting, the official conclusion seems obvious. Tragic boating accident. Father and daughter swept overboard in some kind of violent struggle. Maybe Jason tried to save Emily when she fell. Maybe they both got pulled under by strong currents. Jason's wallet is found in the cabin, credit cards and cash still inside. Emily's favorite stuffed rabbit, the one she never went anywhere without, sits on the captain's chair, its white fur stained with blood. Rebecca identifies both items through tears. That's Emily's rabbit, Mr. Hoppy. She's had him since she was 2. She wouldn't go anywhere without him. The Coast Guard continues searching for bodies for another week. Divers, sonar equipment, underwater drones. They find nothing. Not so much as a scrap of clothing or a fragment of bone. The ocean doesn't always give up its dead. Coast Guard Captain Michael Torres explains to Rebecca. The currents here are strong. Bodies can be carried miles from where the accident occurred. Rebecca nods, tries to accept this explanation. But deep in her heart, she knows something doesn't add up. Why was there no distress call? Jason was an experienced sailor. He knew those waters like the back of his hand, and the weather had been perfect all weekend. But grief has a way of clouding judgment. Trauma makes us question our own instincts, and Rebecca Mitchell is about to spend the next 12 years living with questions that have no answers. The funeral is held 3 weeks later, 2 empty coffins, because there are no bodies to bury. The church is packed with hundreds of mourners. Jason's co-worker, Emily's classmates, neighbors who barely knew the family but felt compelled to pay their respects. Rebecca stands at the front of the church, dressed in black, holding a framed photo of Jason and Emily taken just days before they disappeared. Father and daughter laughing on the deck of the Second Chance, arms wrapped around each other, sun sparkling on the water behind them. If you look closely at that photo, if you study Jason's face with the knowledge of what you're about to learn, you might notice something, a tightness around his eyes, a forced quality to his smile, as if he's already saying goodbye. But Rebecca doesn't see it. Not yet, she's too broken, too consumed by grief to notice the signs that were right there in front of her all along. The life insurance company pays out quickly, $2 million for Jason, $500,000 for Emily. Rebecca doesn't want the money, can't even look at the checks without breaking down. Blood money, she calls it, the price of her family's lives. She sells the house, can't bear to live with the memories, moves across the country to Portland, Oregon. changes her phone number, deletes her social media accounts, tries to disappear from a world that no longer makes sense without Jason and Emily in it. For 12 years, Rebecca Mitchell lives as a ghost, working dead-end jobs, seeing therapists, popping anxiety pills like candy, existing but not really living. Because how do you live when half your heart has been ripped from your chest and thrown into the ocean? But the ocean, as it turns out, has been keeping secrets, and those secrets are about to destroy everything Rebecca thought she knew about the people she loved most in the world. March 23, 2024, Portland, Oregon. Rebecca Mitchell, now 48 years old, arrives home from her job at a local bookstore. 12 years have aged her far beyond her chronological years. Gray streaks in her brown hair, deep lines around her eyes, the hollow look of someone who's been carrying unbearable weight for too long. She sorts through her mail with practiced indifference. Bills, junk mail, the occasional sympathy card from well-meaning friends who still remember the anniversary of the tragedy. Nothing that matters. Nothing that could possibly change her carefully constructed world of numbness and routine. Then she sees it. A plain white envelope. Her name and address written in handwriting that makes her knees buckle. Handwriting she recognizes instantly, even though she hasn't seen it in 12 years. Even though it's impossible. The return address is smudged, illegible. The postmark reads Playa del Carmen, Mexico, dated just 1 week ago. Rebecca's hands shake so violently she can barely tear open the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of notebook paper, pink with purple flowers around the border. The kind an 8-year-old girl might choose for a school assignment. But the handwriting is older now, more mature. The handwriting of a young woman, not a child. Dear Mom, the letter begins. I know you think I'm dead. I know you buried an empty coffin and cried at my funeral. But I'm not dead, Mom. I'm alive. I've been alive this whole time, and I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. Dad made me promise I would never contact you. He said you didn't want us anymore, that you were happier without us. But Dad died 6 months ago, and now I know the truth. Now I know what really happened that day on the boat, and Mom, you need to know too. The letter is signed Emily Mitchell with a little heart drawn next to the name, just like Emily used to do when she was 8 years old. Rebecca reads the letter 17 times before her brain finally accepts what her eyes are seeing. Her daughter, her baby girl who she watched sail away 12 years ago, is alive, has been alive this entire time, living in Mexico with the man Rebecca thought was a devoted husband and father, but who is apparently something far more sinister. The letter continues, I can't explain everything in writing. It's too dangerous, and there's too much you need to know. I'm scared, Mom. I've been scared for 12 years, but I'm 20 years old now, and I'm ready to tell the truth. Meet me at the Blue Parrot Cafe in Playa del Carmen. I'll be there every day at noon until you come. Please come, Mom. Please don't let Dad's lies keep us apart anymore. Rebecca's vision blurs. Her chest tightens. For a moment, she thinks she's having a heart attack. The room spins, her legs give out, and she collapses onto her kitchen floor, clutching the letter to her chest like a lifeline. This has to be a sick joke, some cruel hoax by someone who knows her story, because Emily is dead, Jason is dead. She saw their blood on that boat. She buried their empty coffins. She spent 12 years in therapy learning to accept their deaths. But the handwriting, the little heart next to the signature, the way Emily spelled definitely as definitely, the same spelling mistakes she always made in elementary school. The reference to Mr. Hoppy, the stuffed rabbit that no one outside the family would know about. Details a hoaxer couldn't possibly know. Details that make this letter either genuine or part of a conspiracy so elaborate and cruel that it defies imagination. Rebecca calls the Portland Police Department with shaking fingers. I need to report. I don't know what to report. I think my daughter who died 12 years ago might be alive. The desk sergeant's voice is patient but skeptical. Ma'am, can you come in tomorrow and file a report? We'll need to see the letter and take a full statement. But Rebecca can't wait until tomorrow. Can't spend another minute not knowing if her daughter is really alive. She books a flight to Cancun that leaves in 6 hours, empties her savings account, packs a single bag with hands that won't stop trembling. Because if there's even a 1% chance that Emily is alive, Rebecca Mitchell will move heaven and earth to find her. Playa del Carmen, Mexico. A picturesque beach town on the Caribbean coast, popular with tourists and American expatriates seeking a cheaper cost of living. White sand beaches, crystal blue water, palm trees swaying in the tropical breeze. Paradise on earth, if you don't look too closely at the shadows. Rebecca arrives at the Blue Parrot Cafe at 11:30 a.m., 30 minutes early because she can't bear to wait another second. She orders coffee she doesn't drink and sits at a table with a clear view of the entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird. Noam comes and goes. No Emily? 12:15, 12:30. Rebecca's hope begins to crumble like a sandcastle in the tide. This was all a cruel joke after all, some sick person's idea of entertainment. Then at 12:45, a young woman walks through the cafe door. 20 years old, long blonde hair, green eyes that Rebecca would recognize anywhere. Taller now, obviously, more mature, but unmistakably her daughter. Unmistakably Emily. The girl scans the cafe nervously, and when her eyes meet Rebecca's, they both freeze. Mother and daughter, separated by 12 years of lies and an ocean of pain, staring at each other across a crowded restaurant in a foreign country. Emily approaches slowly, cautiously, as if Rebecca might disappear like smoke if she moves too quickly. "Mom," she whispers, and her voice is different now, deeper, but still carries traces of the little girl Rebecca remembers. Rebecca can't speak, can't breathe, can't do anything but reach out with trembling hands and touch her daughter's face, confirming that this isn't a dream or hallucination. Emily is real. Emily is alive. Emily is here. They hold each other and cry for 20 minutes straight. Other cafe patrons stare, probably thinking they're witnessing some dramatic telenovela scene. They have no idea they're watching a mother reunite with a daughter she thought was dead for over a decade. When they finally separate, Rebecca has 1,000 questions, but Emily shakes her head. "Not here, too many people. Come to my apartment, I'll tell you everything." Emily lives in a small studio above a souvenir shop. Sparse furniture, concrete walls, a single window overlooking the busy street below. It's nothing like the comfortable middle-class home she grew up in. And Rebecca's heart breaks all over again thinking about the childhood her daughter lost. "Dad told me you didn't want us anymore." Emily begins, settling onto the threadbare couch beside her mother. "He said you were relieved when we disappeared, that you had already started dating someone new, that you changed your phone number so we couldn't contact you." Rebecca's blood turns to ice. "Emily, honey, none of that is true. I spent 12 years thinking you were dead. I went to your funeral. I never stopped loving you, not for a single second." Emily nods, tears streaming down her face. "I know that now. After Dad died, I found his papers. His real papers, with his real name and our real life. I saw newspaper articles about the search for us. I saw pictures of you at our funeral. I realized everything he told me was a lie. The truth comes pouring out in broken fragments. Jason Mitchell, the devoted husband and father, was actually a man with massive gambling debts and connections to dangerous people. He owed $500,000 to a loan shark named Vincent Carrera, money he'd borrowed and lost playing high-stakes poker games in illegal casinos. When Carrera threatened to kill Jason's family if he didn't pay up, Jason made a decision that would destroy lives and shatter reality for everyone who loved him. He decided to fake his own death and Emily's, collect the life insurance money, and start a new life in Mexico where Carrera couldn't find them. "But why take you?" Rebecca asks, though she's already starting to understand the horrifying answer. "Because I was his cover," Emily says quietly. "A single man disappearing looks suspicious, but a father tragically lost at sea with his daughter? That's just a terrible accident. He needed me to make the story believable." The plan was elaborate and coldly calculated. Jason had been planning it for months. He bought pig's blood from a local butcher, told them he was making a horror movie with friends. He practiced sailing routes to find the perfect spot to stage the accident. He even coached Emily on what to say if anyone ever questioned their story. "He told me it was a game," Emily continues, "that we were going to surprise you by disappearing and then coming back. He said you would be so happy to see us that you'd forgive him for the debts. I was 8 years old, Mom. I believed everything he told me. But they never came back." Once they reached Mexico, Jason's lies grew darker and more controlling. He convinced Emily that Rebecca had moved on, started a new family, forgotten all about them. He showed her fake social media profiles he'd created, photos of Rebecca supposedly happy with a new husband and stepchildren. "Every time I asked to call you, he had another excuse. Your new husband didn't like being reminded of your old family. You were too busy with your new kids. You'd changed your name and didn't want to be found. I was just a kid, Mom. I believed him because he was my father and I trusted him." For 12 years, Emily lived in Mexico under the name Sofia Martinez. Jason became Roberto Martinez, working construction jobs and keeping a low profile. They moved frequently, never staying in one place long enough for Emily to form lasting friendships or ask too many questions about their past. "He homeschooled me," Emily explains. "Said Mexican schools weren't good enough for his daughter, but really he was just keeping me isolated so I wouldn't talk to anyone who might figure out who we really were." When Emily turned 18, she started asking harder questions. Why couldn't she get a real birth certificate? Why didn't she have any extended family? Why were there no photos of her as a baby? Jason's explanations became more frantic, more contradictory. He started drinking more, getting angry when I questioned him. I think he knew I was starting to figure things out. 6 months ago, Jason Mitchell died of a massive heart attack while working on a construction site in Tulum. Emily, now calling herself Sophia, had to clean out his apartment and deal with his affairs. That's when she found the box hidden under his bed. Inside, Jason Mitchell's real driver's license, Emily Mitchell's real birth certificate, newspaper clippings about their disappearance, and photos, hundreds of photos of their real life in California, including pictures of Rebecca that proved everything Jason had told Emily about her mother was a lie. There were even copies of the letters you sent to the Coast Guard, begging them to keep searching for us. Letters to missing person organizations. You never stopped looking, did you, Mom? Rebecca shakes her head, unable to speak through her tears. She never stopped looking, never stopped hoping, never stopped loving the daughter she thought was lost forever. As Emily continues her story, a picture emerges of Jason Mitchell that Rebecca barely recognizes. The charming, successful architect she married was a facade, hiding a manipulative sociopath willing to psychologically torture his own child to save his own skin. He controlled everything, Emily says. What I wore, who I talked to, where I went. He said it was to keep me safe. But really he was just terrified I'd figure out the truth and expose him. The more Emily talks, the more Rebecca realizes how many warning signs she missed. Jason's mysterious phone calls that he claimed were work emergencies. The way he'd get defensive when she asked about their finances. His insistence on handling all their banking and insurance matters himself. There were times when I almost figured it out, Emily continues. When I was 14, I found a Mexican birth certificate with my fake name on it. When I asked Dad about it, he said the Mexican government had made a mistake, confused me with another girl. He was so convincing, so calm, I believed him. Jason's psychological manipulation was sophisticated and relentless. He created an entire alternate reality where Rebecca was the villain who had abandoned her family, and he was the heroic father protecting his daughter from a mother who didn't love her. He showed me fake Facebook profiles of you with other men, Emily says. Said you'd remarried and had other kids, that you told people Emily and Jason were just a tragic part of your past that you preferred not to discuss. The cruelest part was how Jason weaponized Emily's love for her mother against her. Every time Emily expressed sadness about missing Rebecca, Jason would use it as proof that Rebecca didn't deserve Emily's love. He'd say things like, if your mother really loved you, wouldn't she have found us by now? Wouldn't she have looked harder? And I was just a kid, Mom. I didn't understand how impossible it would be to find someone who was supposed to be dead. Jason also isolated Emily from any potential support system. They never stayed in one place long enough for her to form close friendships. He discouraged her from dating, claiming Mexican boys weren't good enough for his American princess. He even convinced her that learning Spanish too well was dangerous because it would make her forget her English and lose her connection to her real culture. Looking back, I realize he was terrified that if I integrated into Mexican society, I might find people who would help me or ask the right questions. He wanted me dependent on him for everything. The financial details of Jason's scheme are equally disturbing. He had indeed collected the $2 million in life insurance money, but not directly. Before staging their deaths, he had a trusted friend named Michael Torres establish fake identities and offshore bank accounts. Torres, who Rebecca remembers as one of Jason's poker buddies, was apparently the only person who knew the truth about what happened on the boat that day. Dad paid Torres $100,000 to help him disappear, Emily explains. Torres created our fake Mexican documents, set up the bank accounts, even helped stage the blood on the boat. But Torres died in a car accident 3 years ago, so he can't tell us exactly how they did it. The realization hits Rebecca like a physical blow. Not only did Jason fake their deaths and kidnap their daughter, but he had an accomplice, someone who sat at their dinner table, played with Emily in their backyard, looked Rebecca in the eye at the funeral, and offered his condolences, all while knowing exactly what had happened to her family. There's something else, Emily says quietly. Something I found in Dad's papers that I haven't told you yet. She disappears into the tiny kitchen and returns with a manila folder stuffed with documents. Inside are bank statements, transaction records, and correspondence that paint an even darker picture of Jason's deception. Dad didn't just fake our deaths for the insurance money, Emily says. He was planning to kill himself too, eventually. Make it look like grief drove him to suicide so you'd never question what happened. But when we got to Mexico, he realized he could live comfortably on the insurance money and decided to keep us both alive instead. The documents show that Jason had been planning this elaborate scheme for over a year before they disappeared. He'd researched missing person cases, studied how life insurance investigations work, even practiced sailing to remote locations where cell phone coverage was spotty. But the most chilling discovery is a letter Jason wrote but never sent, addressed to Rebecca and found in his papers after his death. Emily hands it to Rebecca with trembling fingers. I don't know if you want to read this, Mom. It's pretty awful. The letter is typed, no signature, but unmistakably Jason's voice. Rebecca, if you're reading this, then my plan worked and you believe Emily and I are dead. I want you to know that none of this was personal. You were a good wife and mother, but I had debts you couldn't understand and enemies you couldn't fight. Taking Emily wasn't about hurting you. It was about giving her a chance at a different life, away from the violence that was coming for our family. By the time you read this, we'll be somewhere safe, somewhere Carrera and his people can't find us. Don't look for us, don't hope for us, just try to move on and be happy. We're dead to you now, and it's better that way. Rebecca reads the letter 3 times before the full impact hits her. Jason never intended for her to learn the truth, never planned for Emily to reconnect with her. As far as he was concerned, Rebecca could spend the rest of her life grieving for a daughter who was alive and missing her every single day. He was going to let me think you were dead forever, Rebecca whispers. Emily nods, tears streaming down her face. The only reason I found out the truth is because he died before he could destroy all the evidence. If he'd lived longer, you never would have gotten my letter. I would have spent my whole life believing you didn't want me. The magnitude of Jason's betrayal is staggering. He didn't just fake their deaths. He attempted to murder the love between a mother and daughter, to poison Emily's memories of Rebecca so thoroughly that she would never want to come home. And for 12 years it worked. Mother and daughter spend the next 3 days together in Emily's tiny apartment, trying to piece together 12 years of stolen time. Rebecca learns that her daughter grew up to be intelligent, resilient, and surprisingly well-adjusted despite the psychological trauma inflicted by her father. Emily learned to speak fluent Spanish, graduated from high school through online courses, and has been working as a tour guide for American tourists visiting Mayan ruins. She's saved money, made a few friends, and even had a boyfriend for 6 months before Jason's jealousy and controlling behavior drove the young man away. I always felt like something was missing, Emily tells her mother, like there was this huge hole in my heart that I couldn't explain. Dad said it was normal, that everyone feels sad sometimes. But now I know what was missing. It was you, Mom. It was the life we should have had together. Rebecca learns that Emily remembered more about their old life than Jason realized. She remembered their house in Sausalito, their cat Whiskers, the bedtime stories Rebecca used to read to her. She remembered Rebecca's laugh, the way she smelled like vanilla perfume, the lullabies she used to sing. Sometimes I would dream about you, Emily says, and when I'd wake up I'd feel so sad I couldn't explain. Dad said it was just my imagination, that kids make up fantasy parents when they're not happy with their real family. But you weren't fantasy, were you, Mom? You were real, and you were looking for me. The physical reunion is overwhelming for both of them. Rebecca can't stop touching Emily's face, her hands, her hair, as if she needs constant proof that this isn't another cruel dream. Emily keeps apologizing for believing Jason's lies, for not trying harder to find the truth, for the 12 years they lost. You were 8 years old, Rebecca says over and over. None of this was your fault. You were a child manipulated by someone who was supposed to protect you. But Emily's guilt runs deeper than logic can reach. I should have known, Mom. There were so many signs, the way Dad would change the subject whenever I asked about you, the way he'd get angry if I talked about missing America, the way he never let me use the internet without supervision. They spend hours looking through photos on Rebecca's phone, 12 years of birthdays and Christmases, and ordinary moments that Emily missed. Rebecca shows her pictures of their old house, now owned by strangers, pictures of Whiskers the cat, who lived to be 16 and died just 2 years ago. Pictures of Rebecca's attempts to rebuild her life, the therapy sessions and support groups and grief counseling that never quite healed the wound of losing her child. I used to go to the cemetery every week. Rebecca tells her daughter, I'd bring flowers to your empty grave and tell you about my day. People thought I was crazy talking to a headstone with no body underneath it, but somehow I always felt like you could hear me. Emily breaks down completely at this revelation. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I let him convince me you didn't love me. I'm so sorry I didn't try harder to find you. But Rebecca's anger isn't directed at Emily. It's focused like a laser beam on Jason Mitchell, the man she loved and trusted and shared her life with for 15 years, the man who turned out to be a monster in disguise. I want to kill him, Rebecca says quietly. I know he's already dead, but I want to kill him myself for what he did to us, for what he stole from us. Emily understands. She's been carrying her own rage since discovering the truth about their disappearance. Sometimes I'm glad he's dead, she admits. Is that terrible? He was my father and I loved him, but what he did to us, what he did to you, I can't forgive it. They cry together, rage together, hold each other and marvel at the fact that they're both alive and in the same room after 12 years of separation. But they also have to face some harsh realities about what comes next. Emily has no legal identity in the United States. Officially, she's been dead since she was 8 years old. Her social security number was canceled, her birth certificate marked deceased. Getting her legally alive again will require lawyers, court hearings, bureaucratic nightmares that could take years to resolve. She also has no education credentials that would be recognized in America, no work history, no credit score, no driver's license. At 20 years old, she'll have to start completely over in a country she barely remembers. Are you sure you want to come back? Rebecca asks. Mexico is your home now. You have friends here, a job, a life. America might feel foreign to you after all this time. But Emily's answer is immediate and certain. I want to come home, Mom. I've been homesick for 12 years without understanding what I was homesick for. Now I know. I was homesick for you. Getting Emily legally alive again proves to be as complicated as Rebecca feared. The first lawyer they consult in Portland tells them it could take 2 to 3 years and cost upwards of $50,000 in legal fees. Resurrection cases are extremely rare. Attorney David Kim explains, "We're essentially asking the court to reverse a death certificate that was issued based on what appeared to be legitimate evidence at the time. The legal system isn't designed to handle people coming back from the dead. The process requires mountains of documentation. DNA tests to prove Emily is who she claims to be. Psychiatric evaluations to confirm she's not suffering from delusions or false memories. Testimony from anyone who knew the family before the disappearance. Most challenging of all, they need to prove that Jason Mitchell deliberately faked their deaths rather than being a victim himself. The insurance company is going to fight this," Kim warns. They paid out $2.5 million based on the assumption that both victims were dead. If Emily is alive, they'll want their money back plus interest and penalties. They might even pursue criminal fraud charges against the estate. Rebecca doesn't care about the money. She'd give back every penny if it meant having her daughter home. But Emily is tormented by guilt over the insurance fraud, even though she was an 8-year-old victim when it happened. "I feel like I'm a criminal," Emily tells her mother. "Like I helped Dad steal all that money from you." "You were a child," Rebecca reminds her. "You're not responsible for crimes committed by adults against your will." But the legal system sees things differently. Emily might be a victim, but she's also technically an accessory to insurance fraud. She lived off the proceeds of that fraud for 12 years. The fact that she was manipulated and lied to doesn't necessarily absolve her of legal responsibility. Detective Paul Rodriguez, now retired from the Coast Guard but following the case closely, offers his perspective. "This is the most complex missing persons case I've ever encountered. Jason Mitchell didn't just fake his death. He created an entirely new reality for his daughter. The psychological manipulation involved is beyond anything I've seen in 20 years of law enforcement." Rodriguez agrees to testify on Emily's behalf, explaining how sophisticated Jason's deception was and how impossible it would have been for an 8-year-old to understand or resist such manipulation. His testimony could be crucial in establishing Emily as a victim, rather than a willing participant. The media attention is overwhelming. Once news of Emily's return breaks, reporters camp outside Rebecca's apartment, film crews follow them to court hearings, and talk show producers offer 6-figure sums for exclusive interviews. "Missing Girl Returns from Dead After 12 Years" becomes the headline story on every major news network. The case captures public imagination in a way that makes both Rebecca and Emily deeply uncomfortable. "I just want my life back," Emily says during one particularly aggressive media ambush. "I want to go to college, get a job, be normal. I don't want to be famous for being kidnapped by my own father." But normal isn't an option anymore. Their story has touched something primal in the public consciousness, the fear that the people we trust most might be lying to us, that our entire reality might be built on deception. The legal battles multiply. The life insurance company files suit to recover the fraudulent payments. The Mexican government demands Emily's return to face questions about her illegal immigration status. Jason's construction company in Mexico, which employed him under false pretenses, threatens to sue for damages. "It's like Jason is still controlling our lives from the grave," Rebecca says during a particularly frustrating day in court. "Even dead, he's still finding ways to hurt us." 6 months into the legal proceedings, Emily remembers something that changes everything. Michael Torres, Jason's accomplice who died in a car accident 3 years earlier, had a wife named Carmen who still lives in Playa del Carmen. Carmen might know details about how Dad and Torres planned everything. Emily tells Rebecca, "She might even have evidence that could help prove I was a victim, not a willing participant." They return to Mexico, despite their lawyer's advice to stay in the United States until Emily's legal status is resolved. Carmen Torres agrees to meet them at a small restaurant near the beach, nervous and clearly frightened about getting involved. Carmen is a small woman in her 50s, weathered by sun and hard work, with kind eyes and calloused hands. She greets Emily with tears, remembering the scared little girl who used to visit their house with Roberto. "I always knew something was wrong," Carmen says in accented English. "Your father, he was too nervous, too careful about everything. And you, Pequeña, you always looked so sad, like you were missing something important." Carmen's revelation is explosive. Michael Torres didn't just help Jason fake their deaths. He documented everything. He kept detailed records of the plan, including photographs of the staged crime scene on the boat, copies of the fake Mexican identity documents, and most importantly, recordings of conversations where Jason explicitly discussed kidnapping Emily and deceiving Rebecca. Miguel was paranoid, Carmen explains. He said if Jason ever tried to betray him or cut him out of the money, he needed proof to protect himself. He recorded everything on his phone. Torres kept all of this evidence in a safe deposit box at a bank in Cozumel, with instructions that if anything happened to him, the contents should be given to his wife. Carmen has been sitting on this explosive information for 3 years, too frightened to come forward because she didn't want to get involved with American authorities. I knew what they did was wrong, she says. But Miguel was my husband, and I was scared. I didn't want him to go to prison. The recordings are damning. Jason's voice, clear and unmistakable, discussing the details of the fake death scheme. His casual mention of keeping Emily confused about her mother and his plan to make sure she never wants to go back to that life. Most chilling is a conversation between Jason and Torres recorded just 2 months after they arrived in Mexico. She keeps asking about Rebecca, Jason's voice says on the scratchy recording. I told her mommy found a new family and doesn't want her old one anymore. She cried for 3 hours. Torres responds, kids are resilient, man. She'll forget eventually. I hope so, Jason replies, because if she ever figures out the truth, this whole thing falls apart. The recordings prove beyond any doubt that Emily was a victim of kidnapping and psychological abuse, not a willing participant in insurance fraud. They also reveal the calculated cruelty of Jason's manipulation, his complete lack of concern for his daughter's emotional well-being. He talked about me like I was a problem to be solved, Emily says after listening to the recordings, not like I was his daughter who he loved. Carmen also provides photographs that Torres took of the boat staging, showing Jason applying pig's blood to the deck and positioning Emily's life jacket to make it look torn and bloody. The photos are dated and time-stamped, providing irrefutable proof that the entire crime scene was fabricated. Miguel took these pictures as insurance. Carmen explains, he said if Jason ever tried to cheat him, he could prove Jason was alive and force him to pay more money. With this new evidence, Emily's legal situation improves dramatically. The recordings and photographs prove she was a victim of kidnapping and fraud, not a participant. The insurance company drops its lawsuit against her, though they continue pursuing Jason's estate for the fraudulent payments. More importantly, the evidence provides closure for Rebecca. She finally understands exactly how her husband betrayed her, exactly how their daughter was stolen from her, exactly how elaborate and cruel the deception was. I used to wonder if I missed some sign that could have prevented this, Rebecca tells Emily. Now I know there was no way to prevent it. Jason planned this for over a year. He manipulated everyone, including me, including you, including the Coast Guard investigators. But with understanding comes a new kind of pain. The recordings reveal just how little Jason actually cared about either of them. Rebecca wasn't his beloved wife. She was an obstacle to his financial freedom. Emily wasn't his cherished daughter. She was a prop in his elaborate performance. The man I married never existed, Rebecca realizes. The father you remember was just a character he played until he didn't need to play it anymore. With the legal battles mostly resolved, Rebecca and Emily face the even more challenging task of rebuilding their relationship and their lives. Emily moves to Portland into a small apartment near Rebecca's and begins the overwhelming process of adapting to American life as a 20-year-old woman. Everything is foreign to her. The food, the culture, the technology, the social expectations. She's never had a smartphone, never used social media, never been to a movie theater or a shopping mall. Jason kept her isolated from modern American culture, and now she feels like an immigrant in her own country. I thought coming home would feel natural, Emily tells Rebecca, but everything is so different from what I remember. I feel like I'm learning to be American all over again. Rebecca enrolls Emily in community college, but the academic challenges are immense. Emily's homeschooling in Mexico was sporadic and limited. She's brilliant but lacks the foundational knowledge that American students take for granted. She's never written a research paper, never taken a standardized test, never participated in classroom discussions. I feel stupid all the time, Emily confesses after a particularly difficult day in her English composition class. Everyone else knows things I've never heard of. They make references to movies and books and historical events that I don't understand. But Emily is determined to catch up. She studies 12 hours a day, absorbs American culture through Netflix and YouTube, practices slang and idioms that sound foreign in her mouth. She's fighting to reclaim not just her identity, but her entire future. The mother-daughter relationship that was frozen in time when Emily was 8 years old has to grow and evolve rapidly. Rebecca has to learn to parent a young adult instead of the child she lost. Emily has to learn to trust and love a mother who feels both familiar and like a stranger. Sometimes I look at you and see my little girl, Rebecca tells Emily. Other times I realize I don't know you at all. You're a grown woman with experiences and opinions in a whole life I wasn't part of. Emily struggles with similar feelings. I love you, Mom, but I don't know how to be your daughter anymore. I don't know what our relationship is supposed to look like now. They attend family therapy together, working through 12 years of separation and trauma. Dr. Sarah Martinez, their counselor, helps them understand that they're essentially meeting each other for the first time, as the people they've become. Grief changed you, Rebecca, Dr. Martinez explains, and survival changed Emily. You're not the same people you were 12 years ago, and that's okay. You need to build a new relationship based on who you are now, not who you were then. The process is slow and sometimes painful. Emily has abandonment issues from years of believing her mother didn't want her. Rebecca has trust issues from discovering that her husband was a stranger. They both have PTSD from their respective traumas. But they also have something powerful working in their favor: genuine love and commitment to rebuilding their family. Emily starts dating, tentatively, nervously. Her first boyfriend is a sweet college student named Marcus who doesn't know her story and treats her like any other 20-year-old. But when Emily finally tells him the truth about her past, he struggles to understand the complexity of her situation. It's not that I don't believe you, Marcus tells her. It's just, how do I date someone who was legally dead for 12 years? How do I introduce you to my parents? How do I explain that you've never been to a prom or a house party or any of the normal things people our age have experienced? The relationship doesn't last, but it teaches Emily something important about moving forward. She can't hide from her past, but she also can't let it define her entire future. I'm not just the girl who was kidnapped by her father, Emily tells Rebecca. I'm also the girl who learned to speak 3 languages, who can navigate Mexico City by herself, who survived 12 years of psychological manipulation and came out strong enough to find the truth. That has to count for something. Rebecca starts dating too for the first time since Jason's supposed death. It feels like betrayal at first, even though she now knows Jason betrayed her in the worst possible way. She's been mourning a monster while building her life around the memory of a man who never existed. Her first date is with Paul, a kind widower she meets in a grief support group. When she tells him about Emily's return, he's amazed but supportive. You get a second chance with your daughter, he tells her. That's a miracle most people who lose children never get. Don't waste it feeling guilty about the time you lost. Focus on the time you have now. Emily and Rebecca's story has implications far beyond their own family. Other families with missing persons cases start questioning whether their loved ones might still be alive. The case exposes weaknesses in how death certificates are issued and how missing persons investigations are conducted. Detective Rodriguez, now working as a consultant on cold cases, uses the Mitchell case as an example of how sophisticated deception can fool even experienced investigators. We found blood, we found torn clothing, we found a boat adrift in dangerous waters. Rodriguez explains to a conference of law enforcement professionals. Every piece of evidence pointed to a tragic accident. We never considered that the entire scene might be fabricated because we'd never encountered anything that elaborate before. The Coast Guard changes its protocols for investigating missing boaters, requiring more thorough examination of blood evidence and more extensive searches for bodies before declaring victims dead. The insurance industry also makes changes, implementing stricter requirements for death benefit payouts in cases where no body is recovered. Some companies now require waiting periods of up to 7 years before paying out policies for missing persons. Carmen Torres, Michael's widow, uses her share of the recovered evidence to start a nonprofit organization helping Mexican families whose loved ones have been victims of American criminals operating in Mexico. She's found her own form of redemption by helping others navigate the complex legal and emotional challenges of cross-border crimes. Miguel did terrible things, Carmen says, but maybe some good can come from the evidence he left behind. Maybe other families won't have to suffer like the Mitchells did. The case also highlights the vulnerability of children to psychological manipulation by trusted adults. Emily becomes an advocate for better training of teachers, counselors, and social workers to recognize signs of parental alienation and psychological abuse. If just one adult in Mexico had asked me the right questions, maybe I would have figured out the truth sooner. Emily tells a conference of child welfare professionals. Kids need advocates who understand that sometimes the danger comes from inside the family, not outside it. The media attention eventually dies down, but Emily and Rebecca's story continues to resonate with people around the world. They receive thousands of letters from other families dealing with missing persons cases, some thanking them for giving hope, others asking for advice on how to keep searching when everyone else has given up. Your story saved my family. One letter reads, My brother disappeared 5 years ago and everyone told us to accept that he was probably dead. But after hearing about Emily, we hired a private investigator and found him living in Canada under a false name. He'd been having a mental health crisis and didn't know how to come home. Thank you for showing us that sometimes the impossible is just improbable. But for every positive outcome, there are also painful reminders of the damage Jason's deception caused. Emily will never get back her childhood, her adolescence, her formative years. Rebecca will never get back 12 years of her daughter's life, 12 years of birthdays and graduations, and mother-daughter moments. I try not to think about what we lost, Rebecca says. But sometimes I see mothers with their teenage daughters, and I feel this sharp pain in my chest. That should have been us. We should have had those years together. Emily feels the loss too, but she's learned to focus on what they gained by surviving. I'm alive, Mom. We're both alive. After everything Dad did to us, everything he stole from us, we're still here. We're still fighting. We're still loving each other. That has to mean something. Today, 3 years after Emily's letter arrived in Rebecca's mailbox, mother and daughter are still rebuilding their relationship one day at a time. Emily graduated from community college with honors and is now studying psychology at Portland State University, hoping to become a therapist who specializes in helping children who've been psychologically manipulated by parents. Rebecca has returned to work as a social worker, using her experience to help other families navigate missing persons cases. She's learned to spot the signs of parental alienation and psychological abuse that she missed in her own marriage. I can't save my own past, Rebecca says, but maybe I can help other families avoid what we went through. The legal battles are finally over. Emily is officially alive again, with a new social security card, a driver's license, and a passport that proves she exists in the eyes of the law. The insurance company recovered most of the fraudulent death benefits from Jason's Mexican bank accounts. Though they couldn't recover the interest on 12 years of stolen money, Jason Mitchell's grave in Sausalito remains unmarked. Rebecca refused to put up a headstone for a man who destroyed so many lives. Emily has never visited the cemetery where her empty coffin was buried, and she says she never will. I'm not going to grieve for the father I thought I had, Emily explains. That man was just a character in Jason's performance. The real Jason Mitchell was a monster, and monsters don't deserve mourning. But the case raises haunting questions that extend far beyond one family's tragedy. How many other Jason Mitchells are out there, men and women who would sacrifice their children's well-being to save their own lives? How many other families are living with lies so elaborate that they become indistinguishable from reality? How many other Emily Mitchells are out there right now, isolated and manipulated, believing their families don't love them while those families grieve for children who are still alive? The answer is more disturbing than most people want to consider. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, over 400,000 children are reported missing in the United States every year. While most are found quickly, thousands remain missing for months or years. Some percentage of those children may be victims of elaborate deceptions like the one Jason Mitchell orchestrated. Every missing child case should be investigated with the possibility that someone is deliberately hiding that child. Detective Rodriguez now tells law enforcement audiences, "We can't assume that every missing person is a victim of random violence or accident. Sometimes the person who reports them missing is the same person who made them disappear." The Mitchell case has become a cautionary tale about the limits of trust, the complexity of family relationships, and the devastating power of psychological manipulation. It's a reminder that the people closest to us have the greatest ability to hurt us, precisely because we trust them with our hearts, our minds, and our children. But it's also a story of resilience, of love surviving even the most elaborate attempts to destroy it, of truth eventually emerging from even the most carefully constructed lies. Rebecca and Emily Mitchell lost 12 years of their lives to Jason's deception. They can never get those years back, but they've used their survival to help other families, to change systems that failed them, and to prove that love is stronger than manipulation, truth is stronger than lies, and hope is stronger than despair. If you're watching this and you have a family member who's been missing for years, don't give up hope. If investigators have told you to accept that your loved one is probably dead, keep asking questions. If something about a missing person case doesn't feel right to you, trust your instincts. And if you know a child who seems isolated from their extended family, who has stories about their absent parent that don't quite add up, who seems afraid to talk about their past, pay attention, ask gentle questions. Be the adult who might help that child discover the truth. The Jason Mitchells of the world depend on people not asking questions, not digging deeper, not trusting their instincts when something feels wrong. They count on our willingness to accept tragic explanations for complex situations. Don't let them count on you. What would you do if you received a letter from someone you'd grieved for 12 years? What would you do if you discovered that your entire life was built on a lie? What would you do if you found out that the person you trusted most had betrayed you in the worst possible way? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story affected you, if it made you think about trust and family and the complexity of human relationships, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more true crime stories that will challenge everything you think you know about human nature. Because the truth, as Rebecca and Emily Mitchell learned, is often stranger and more disturbing than any fiction we could imagine. Until next time, pay attention to the people around you, ask questions when something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts, and remember that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept easy answers when the people you care about are at stake. Stay safe out there and never stop looking for the truth, no matter how buried it might be.